Hello everybody. The purpose of this video is to quickly take you through to task 2 because there's a lot of questions being raised whether the exam deadline will be pushed back, whether there will be any extension to the assignment submission deadlines and all that. So those can be possibilities, but we don't know as of now. Everybody is trying to deal with the current situation rather than trying to speculate what's going to happen in few weeks time. But my point is we have already received the assignment, and this assignment is not going to change. Therefore, it's good if we can attempt the assignment and be prepared, at least complete task 1 and task 2, part of task 2, so that when things fall back to normalcy, we can quickly bounce back and submit our assignments without any delays. So task 1, I actually don't believe that you have any questions, because I've done a briefing, and there was an online briefing also which was posted on the WhatsApp group. So if there are any questions, you can reach out to me. Some of you have submitted some work that you have done, but I have not given you any feedback as of now. Sorry about it, because last week had been a bit of a chaotic week for me. So just hold on. By next week, I'll try to give some feedback. And if this curfew is extended for next week, which is quite a possibility, if so, let's look at a online method of giving feedback, which I will discuss with Slim and get back to you. So I just want you to focus on, I will share the screen to show you the, yes. So this is how task 2 looks like. So I'm not going to go back to task 1, but task 1, I just want you to focus on part B of task 1, where you brought in certain literature to support your theme. Now you would have, say you selected the theme of customer loyalty. On task 1 part B, you were asked to prove or critically evaluate how reputation would affect the theme that you have selected. So if you have selected the theme of customer loyalty, how would reputation affect customer loyalty? How would reputation affect new product development if that's your theme? How would reputation affect customer acquisition, right? So I think we discussed this in detail, but this has a lot to do with literature review, where you bring in literature and prove the connection between reputation and the theme that you have selected, or the objective that you are trying to achieve by this assignment. So part A of task 2, I'll quickly read this. In line with the theme you have selected for this assignment, you are required to carry out the following. A, critically evaluate the organization's current corporate strategy, structure, systems, and culture. So if you put all this together again, critically evaluate the organization's current corporate strategy, structure, systems, and culture. So if you put this together, they're talking about personality. Strategy, structure, systems, and culture is actually corporate personality, right? In relation to its positioning and reputation, also assessing the current gaps between image and identity. Recommend how this gap could be addressed to achieve the objectives, right? So very simple. If you go back to the presentation, I'll quickly share the presentation with you. This is the last presentation that I shared with you, the corporate identity presentation. So here I have brought in a model, right? This model you guys are familiar with: corporate personality, uh, corporate identity, corporate image, and corporate reputation. We learned that corporate personality is a combination of strategy, structure, systems, and culture, right? Then how you express this personality is your corporate identity. So in other words, you might be using behavior, communications, behavior, communications, and symbols to project your identity. So to project your personality. So that becomes your identity. And then finally, image is how people perceive you, how your consumers, how your stakeholders would perceive you. So that becomes the image. So when we learn this model, we also learn that there can be a difference between the identity and the image. Identity is what you're trying to project. Image is how people perceive you, right? So task 2, part A, is all about applying these models to your company, selected company. So in other words, you will have to select a company. Say you selected Odell. You take Odell as an organization. What is Odell's personality? When you say personality, what is Odell's structure? What is Odell's strategy? What is Odell's culture? So you need to now apply this theory to the company that you have selected. And further, when you do this, you need to talk about any gaps between what you're trying to project and how people perceive you. Simple as that. So this is all about application. So if I move on in this presentation, we learned about corporate personality. We learned about corporate personality. How do you plot your company's corporate personality and say, okay, some companies are friendly, some companies are straightforward, some companies are empathetic, honest. There are certain companies which are charming, stylish, and elegant. They are not really socially responsible and corporate kind of companies, but they are more charming and elegant and very trendy, cool type of company. So if you look at a company like Odell, you might say Odell is trendy and cool. Whereas if you select a company like John Kears, you might say they are elegant and socially responsible. So likewise, this is the time where you need to apply all these theories that you have learned to the company that you have selected. Right now, I'm not going to tell you which theories that you should select. There is a plethora of theories, but you need to prioritize and select the most important ones. Now the slide that you are seeing right now, the corporate personality scale, can be used to plot the selected company and tell the examiner the selected company is plotted here. It's an elegant company, or else it's a charming company, or else it's a selfish company. So you need to give a personality to the company that you have selected. Now, how do you do that? You will have to look at various models, like say personality profile models like what you're seeing here, or else you can actually go into a little bit more detail into corporate culture and the strategy process. How is the company formulating strategy? Are they formulating strategy based on, I'll quickly move on, deliberate versus emergent? How are they coming up with strategy? Is it just a deliberate process, Or are they combining these deliberate strategies with emergent strategies? How are they formulating their strategy? Then are they looking at a balanced scorecard, right? Then what is their vision, mission? Because remember, when you define a company's corporate personality, it's very important for you to look at the vision, mission, purpose of the company, because that talks a great deal about the organization's personality. So you need to look at the vision, you need to look at the mission, you need to look at the purpose of the company if you're really analyzing an organization's corporate personality. So few things: you can look at vision, mission, values. You can look at the corporate strategy, how strategy is formulated. Is it a deliberate process or emergent process, or is it a combination of all that? What is the organization structure? Is it a rigid and a bureaucratic structure, or is it a flexible, modern culture structure? I'm sorry. We learned about different sorts of structure, right? Emerging trends of structure. There are flat structures, horizontal structures, unglued, output focused, boundaryless structure. So what is the structure that is being used in your company, right? Then looking at culture, if you can remember, we learned about the cultural web. We said there are elements in this cultural web: stories and myths, symbols, power structures, organization structures, control systems, and rituals. So can you apply your company and do a similar table like what you're seeing right now? What is organization structure, the control systems, power structure of the selected company, stories that you always hear in this selected company, what are the rituals and routines that you see in this selected company? Can you remember I gave you examples like in Odell, how Feng Shui is being used, right? Certain rituals and routines that have been practiced by Otara those days. So likewise, go through all these theories. Now there is obviously a word count limit. Forget about the word count limit. Just do a thorough analysis about your company's corporate personality. So what I mean by corporate personality is you need to analyze the strategy, you need to analyze structure, you need to analyze the culture using a model like cultural web, or else you can actually do all this and plot your company based on the personality traits. Remember the personality traits that we learned: chic, trendy, straightforward, corporate, social, responsible, masculine. You can give a personality trait to the company that you have selected. So that needs to be followed by a proper analysis like this. Uh, then then the most important element is actually going into the symbols, communication, and behavior of what your company has done so far. What are the symbols used by the company? How do they communicate? What do they communicate? And what's the actual behavior, right? So you might have to go through certain press releases that your company has done, symbols the company would have used, certain activities that the company has done, certain behavioral stuff will have to be brought into the assignment to show this is how the organization has used the identity mix. Now I'm going back to the initial slide to connect all these factors together. So you first talk about the corporate personality, relate to the company and say this is the corporate personality, and then you go and explain how this personality is being projected, how this personality is being projected by using symbols, communication, and behavioral aspects. So once you do this, you will have a very clear understanding about the personality and how this personality has been projected. Next step is to identify gaps, right? What gaps? Gaps between image and identity. How do you do that? You will have to talk to employees and see how they feel, right? You will have to talk to some customers and see how they feel about the company. What is their perception about the company? If you can get some insights from the company itself, a company might have done, the organization that you have selected might have done certain studies related to consumer perception, right? What consumers think about the organization. Are there any gaps, right? Now, the most important part of this assignment is the gaps that you are going to highlight. So you need to highlight as much as possible gaps, at least 3-4 important gaps, which will be the foundation of this assignment. The more gaps you identified, more solid gaps you identified, you can bring in better recommendations, right? So recommendations would be the last part of task 2 part A, where you will say, I have identified this gap and these are the recommendations to bridge the gap. So if I give you an example, if in your company's vision, the the company wants to be the most innovative organization in the industry, right? So that's the personality that the company is trying to project, right? So you might be using symbols, behaviors, and various communications to communicate this, right? But when you go and ask your employees would say, this company does not encourage new ideas. Okay. So if that's the case, there is a gap. The gap is in your personality. You are saying you want to be the most innovative company in this industry, but unfortunately your employees don't think that you are innovative enough. Or when you ask your customer, the customer says, no, I don't see this company as an innovative company, right? Now there is a gap. Now your third element of part A, task 2 part A, is bring in recommendation. So your recommendation can be, one recommendation can, the possible recommendation can be, you will say there is a problem in the structure, right? Now the gap is between the image and the identity. Image is consumers don't think you're an innovative company, but your identity and personality says, I want to project this company as an innovative company. So there is a gap. So when you dig in deep, you will realize the problem lies in the structure of the company, right? The organization is structured in a way where the organization is in silos. They can't actually innovate. When a new idea comes, there is no method, a process to study this idea and make it commercially viable. That can be a problem, right? So one recommendation can be to change the structure, right? To make the structure more agile so that you can change with the times. You're more flexible. Or else your problem can be stemming from the culture. The company's culture, the rituals had been very laid back. They don't want to do new things, right? So that had been the culture of the company. You don't listen to people who join the company, right? You need to serve more than 10 years or 15 years to be taken seriously. So these are main elements of culture. So your culture is not fostering new ideas. That can be another problem. So your recommendation can be fixes to the culture. So likewise, you need to now apply all these theories that you have learned and see whether there are gaps. Now, the question I know that most of you might be having right now is, do we have enough word count to complete all this? Forget about the word count. You just do this task and then we can prioritize. We can see which modules need to come in, which modules will go out, right? Let's make that call later, but do a thorough analysis of your company so that you know where the gaps are. right? I will give you one last example. If you look at Haley's, I think I gave this example, right? Towards the last few slides, if you can remember these slides, something that I did, right? I looked at the Haley's vision, I looked at the Haley's mission, I looked at the values of Haley's, and I said, look, if you plot Haley's personality, Haley's can be plotted as a concerned, trustworthy, socially responsible, innovative, reliable, and a leading company and a corporate entity. Right? This is how Haley's would plot their personality. But then I also said there are gaps, right? There are gaps between the identity that we are trying to project and the image. So we looked at communications, how Haley's had communicated, what Haley's had communicated. So you can see Haley's has spoken of turnover, they have spoken of new developments that they have done, they have spoken of social responsibility. So a lot of communications related to social responsibility and financial performance, but very less communication on innovation. Very less communication on innovation. So there is a gap, right? We identified that gap by saying, look, there is a personality that we are trying to project, but unfortunately, we are not projecting the same image to the consumer and the stakeholders. So we spoke to some employees, right? I showed you these results from a Great Place to Work survey, and the biggest gaps are coming from Advantage implements fair policies and procedure, and new ideas are appreciated and encouraged at Advantage. So there is a big gap when it comes to new ideas are appreciated and encouraged. Management thinks yes, new ideas are appreciated and encouraged, but employees actually don't think so. So then there is a gap. So if you identify such gaps, if you actually can identify some important gaps, then you can suggest some recommendations to overcome these gaps. Now that is an important element of your assignment. If I give you one last example, I spoke of Haley's Advantage once again. We said our purpose is to inspire, connect, enrich, and give end-to-end solutions to our customers, right? So you can probably ask this question from the employees or the customers and ask from them what they think about Advantage. Does my customer feel that Advantage will provide end-to-end solutions, right? If customers say no, customers don't actually feel that we are providing end-to-end solutions, then there is a gap, right? The reason behind the gap can be studied and you can bring it as a recommendation. The reason can be, if you can remember the same example that I brought in, was on the structure. The structure is in silos, right? Haley's Advantage freight would be one silo, then you will have 3PL in another silo. So then when you operate in silos, you can't give an end-to-end solution to the customer. So the problem lies in the structure. So then your recommendation should be to change the structure and overcome these limitations that you see in the structure. So you need to now get into your organization, do a proper study about the personality, do a proper study about the identity of the company, the personality, the strategy, the structures, all that, study it properly, and then talk to some customers, talk to some employees and try and identify the gaps. And then number 3 is where you recommend solutions to bridge the gap. So once again, to summarize, number 1, You need to analyze the corporate personality, the corporate structure, the strategy, the culture, the identity, all that. Study the company's personality. That's number one. Number two is identify gaps. If there are gaps between personality, identity, and image, if you see big gaps in the image and the identity, highlight those by talking to customers, by talking to various stakeholders, try and highlight those gaps. Point number three is your recommendations. How do you bridge the gap? So that's all for now. Try and listen to this few more times and see whether you can crack this assignment, part A of task 2. That's all what I want you to do. Then when we meet, hopefully very soon, we can focus on part B and part C of task 2, which is not going to be difficult. So just focus on this part A. And if you have any questions, any concerns, please post it on the WhatsApp group. I will try and help you out. So until we meet again, take care and be safe. Thank you.